Hello, my friends. Rob Roselli coming to you Thursday, November 10th, 2016. And we just had a new president supposedly elected. Whether he actually makes it to the White House is another question. We still have over 2 months until that does happen. Boxofsunglasses.com, that's one word. Twitter at Rob Roselli. And Facebook, Rob Roselli1. Again, that's boxofsunglasses.com, and all the links are there. YouTube channel for previous videos is also available, and we've been talking for the past several episodes is the occult conspiracy. It is a link. There is a link on the website. And on if you page through, you'll see it on page 9, and you can read it for yourself. And basically, it's kind of like I guess it's the hub of the wheel of the website, and it goes through the history and the links, world history, as it really is, not this nonsense they teach in our so-called free public schools and all that sort of thing. And we got up to the numbers. Okay, we went through the tree of life. Okay, what the tree of life really is, and it's right here. Okay, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Okay, yeah, Golden Dawn. One of the most prominent early members was a guy by the name of Aleister Crowley. Probably one of the most evil SOBs that ever lived. Even called himself the Beast in 666 in honor of his father Lucifer. Now, what's funny, well, not really that funny, is in all these email dumps and all this other things that were going on, that Queen Jezebel and her staff were involved in. The name Aleister Crowley started popping up in these all kinds of these weird satanic rituals that these people were involved in. These weirdos, okay, are so-called leaders, okay, and I quote both sides of the election, and it appears that John Podesta and Hillary and some of these sorts of people were caught up in all these weird kind of satanic masses and what have you, and one of the names that popped up was Aleister Crowley, and it's right here. Okay, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. We've talked about this book at length, but just to mention, again, here's the tree of life. Okay, as these people see it, and again, that's your tree of knowledge of good and evil. Let's just get right to the point. Okay, it's not some stupid apple tree or pear tree or something like that. It's an actual, it's a symbol, okay, and it has to do with the study of numbers and numerology, which is really the basis of occultism and this sort of thing. So that's where we arrived at the where we are right now, the occult conspiracy, and it goes through the whole thing. Mystery Babylon, which is no doubt the United States, have no doubt. Ancient Egypt, okay, and the 10 plagues of what they really mean, okay, the frogs, the gnats, the flies, okay, if you go through you can go through the whole list, okay, the dead cattle, brimstone, the darkness, okay, all those are tied to a specific god, so-called in ancient Egypt, and one of the pantheon of gods that is in ancient Egypt. And of course, for those of you that may not be familiar, here it is right here, okay, the all-seeing eye of Apollo or Osiris above the capstone. That is the ancient pyramid of Giza right here in St. John's Divine Cathedral, financed by J.P. Morgan, one of the financiers of this thing, that being the Federal Reserve System. So this is what Trump is facing. Okay, he's facing an occult conspiracy that has its roots going back to the Garden of Eden. And if you think he is going to be successful in his takedown of said conspiracy, I would say that is probably a bad bet, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Okay, now of course the un-American genocidal complex is what stands behind it, and one of the numbers that we are going to talk about a little bit is 322, or March 22nd, which was the foundation of these things, March 22nd, 1980, brought to us by our mysterious friend Robert Christian, okay, who as the international man of mystery, the international, we don't know what he is. I'll just diverge again. For people that haven't heard me talk about Robert Christian, and I have a whole page dedicated to him and can spend endless shows talking about Robert Christian or Christian Rose Cross or Saint Germain or whatever you want to call him, and whether he actually existed or not, amongst a plethora of historians and quote conspiracy theorists, is an open question. Okay, but he was the founder of these things, okay, which call for a reduction of the world's population by 90%, which is going to tie in with our conversation tonight. Now, how do you reduce the world population by 90%? Well, you can distribute the HIV virus through a smallpox vaccine, as the World Health Organization did, as documented in this book, or you can simply start a world war, okay, which explains Pharaoh Barry and his psychopathic push for World War III, which we're going to get to tonight as well. We've covered the first two world wars in previous episodes, and basically World War I was a creation of the international bankers at the time, and World War II, again, is documented here. Okay, the Second War and the World War trifecta really came about as a result of World War I, so the time between the so-called, quote, Great War and World War II was really just a rearming of Nazi Germany and Hitler and his rabble-rousers, and of course underneath it all you had the American eugenics movement, the death merchants, the Rockefeller / Margaret Sanger death merchants, in the American progressive eugenics movement, which was really an offshoot of Darwinism and social Darwinism and this sort of thing, okay, that fed into the person, okay, the monster that would become Adolf Hitler. Again, all documented here, the un-American genocidal complex. Okay, and then of course of the offshoot of World War II, the second war to end all war, so-called, was the United Nations and the radical environmental movement, which circles back around to these things. World government, which is also called for in the anti-10 commandments of the Georgia Guidestones, and the Age of Reason, this sort of thing. And again, the world's population, a 90% reduction in the world's population, which is really the battle cry of the radical environmental movement, these earth-worshipping weirdos in the radical environmental movement calling for the same such thing. Okay, one and the same in many cases with these losers, okay, these anti-Trump people that are in the streets right now, these George Soros-funded meatheads, okay, and thugs, okay, the modern-day brown shirts, Nazi brown shirts that are running around, rioting everywhere, or going to riot in the not-too-distant future. It could be another venue for Pharaoh Barry to cancel the transition of power, a declaration of martial law, but that is going to be overshadowed, I believe, by the inception of the Third World War, okay, which again is as scheduled as we're going to see tonight, okay. And then just incidentally, while we're on books, this is the third book, my third book, Pleased to Meet You, okay. It explains a lot of this. It gives a lot of a kind of conversational background to the quote conspiracy. Just takes it from a different angle, designed as a quick read. That's also available on my site, boxofsunglasses.com. Now, just to run through the numbers again. The key numbers we talk about, 322. We talked about that a little bit. The March 22nd, the signature. Remember the Rosicrucian. Remember the healthcare plan. Their desire to control the medical system of the world. The world sanitariums, hospitals, clinics. Okay, Rosicrucian Digest. Okay, and of course, what did we have on March 22nd, 2010, going into March 23rd, 2010, 30 years to the day, the foundation of these things, we had the Rosicrucian Obamacare signed into law, and for 30 is a significant number because that was the age that Obama's nemesis, Pharaoh Barry's nemesis, Jesus Christ, started his ministry. Okay, again, and that's just one number of many that make this way too many coincidences. Okay, when you look at the occultism that is Obama, there's way too many coincidences, numerical coincidences, for it to be an accident. Okay, and what I just mentioned is one of them. Okay, then we have the number 120. Okay, and that's significant because or occult overlords, because here's an interesting number here, because 120 days or 20 years to the foundation, laying the cornerstone of this thing on December 26th, 1892, okay, is 120 years to the day of December 26th, 2012, which is which was the birthday of the dead sun god Osiris. Okay, so December 25th is is considered, he's dead, and December 26th is the first day that he starts to arise as the days get longer. Okay, Osiris starts to become alive again. Okay, after the low point of the year, December 25th. In case you're wondering, it's not a coincidence. That's the real meaning of Christmas, by the way. It is the birthday of Osiris or Apollo or Nimrod, Tammuz, okay, the Babylonian Tammuz, which is basically the sun god of all these ancient cultures. Okay, and there he is, okay, in the form of the Greek sun god Apollo, which equates to all the aforementioned gods. But this thing right here, okay, the cornerstone was laid on December 26th, 1892, which just so happens to align with the 216th week of Pharaoh Barry's presidency or reign, okay, of the 44th president. Now, 44 just happens to be the number that represents the rose plus the cross, or the male plus the female, okay, or Osiris plus his wife Isis, okay. So I know this is not throwing a lot of information out there right now, but the point is that it's another numerical connection. So when you take 120 and you add that together, okay, you come back to an exact date from the foundation of St. John's the Divine Cathedral, okay, the leading cathedral in the world, as fully documented in section 3 of this book, to December 26th, 2012, 216. At 216, what is the significance of that number? It is 6 times 6 times 6, okay, and 120, of course, is the age of Moses, okay, when he passed on and was not allowed to enter into the promised land. Moses, okay, so when he died, he was 120 years old. Now again, these occultists, they are serious, okay, about their numerology, as I pointed out before. Remember, the tree of knowledge of good and evil is one and the same with the tree of life, is one and the same with the serpent climbing tree of life in that book, The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, that these weirdos like Hillary Clinton and her sidekicks are involved in the same kind of occultism. Okay, so just to kind of wrap it up on that, I know I've said a lot here, and I am saying a lot, but they consider Moses, okay, there's 7, the Freemasons, the 7's a big number to them, 7 chakras of the human body, 7 fundamental languages, the 7 stars of the Pleiades. Okay, so suffice it to say that 7 is a big deal to the Freemasons, but so you can see it there, but the problem is there's another group of 7. Okay, the 7 founders. There's 7 names, okay, that are supposedly 7 archetypes, whatever you want to call it. These to get into what an archetype is, but it's basically what I was explaining before. Apollo equals Osiris or Hora Mazda or Mithras. It's the same sun god, across many cultures. For example, an archetype is just it's a uniform or universal god or goddess of mythology. Okay, where an Isis would be the female equivalent of Osiris, the male plus the female. Now her equivalent in say Babylonia would be Ishtar, in Greece would be Artemis, and Roman Diana. Okay, or Columbia. Okay, so the 7 archetypes, let's just say a Freemasonry, male sun god, I think it was Moses, Noah, I want to say Enoch, okay, Hiram Abiff, which equates to Apollo, the prophet Muhammad, Abraham, okay, I can't remember 1 or 2 others, but the point is that Moses, okay, was one of the so-called founders of Freemasonry. I'm not saying that's true, I'm just saying this is what the Freemasons are saying, but Moses died when he was 120 years old, and now all of a sudden we have this St. John's Divine Cathedral, the cornerstone laid 120 years to the day of the 216th or 6 times 6 times 6 birthday of the 44th president, this Pharaoh Barry, okay, this multi-named, multi-birthplace scam that sits in the White House, and that is very significant, okay, because now this Mayan apocalypse that people were waiting for and all this sort of thing happens around the same time, okay, and I was very much interested in the date of December 26, 2012, prior to a lot of research and was it tied into the Mayan apocalypse? And I don't want to go off on this tangent right now, but I was kind of wondering until I read another article, and it just hit me. All of a sudden, they weren't talking about this, but it just kind of corroborated everything, a lot of my research, okay, into this building. Okay, so in other words, the 44th president, this man of mystery, this multi-name scam in the White House, he wasn't put there by accident, okay? I don't happen to believe that he's going anywhere, okay? So I guess another way to look at this is, the easy way is that his multi-named ghost in the White House, this rose plus the cross, this male plus the female, which resulted in Horus, okay? Isis plus Osiris gave us the dead, the dead Osiris, okay? Combined with Isis, the female, gave us the son, or the son of God, Horus, in ancient Egypt, and that was represented by the pharaoh. Every pharaoh was supposedly the reincarnated sun god. Okay, this goes back to the Garden of Eden, and I don't necessarily want to go off on that tangent. I've discussed this at length and on past shows. Okay, but the rose, just getting back to the rose plus the cross, what that really represents is the rose is the male, okay, or the Occident, okay, or Occidental, as in Pharaoh Barry's first college, which we have no evidence that he was ever there, plus Columbia, or the female, or Isis. So you have the rose plus the cross. Now, supposedly, Dumbo Obama, Pharaoh Barry, went to Columbia University after Occidental. So you can see, but of course none of this can be proven, okay, because he won't release any records of his past. And according to a citizen's grand jury trial in Harlem a few years back by the great Reverend James David Manning, Obama never stepped foot on the campus of Columbia University, okay? And people think it's made up, he's hiding something, there's some kind of scam. I don't think so, okay? Or he's hiding his records, he's embarrassed, whatever. I mean, you can't talk about any of this, of course. You never see this on Fox News, but remember, the rose plus the cross. The rose is equivalent to the west, or the setting sun of the dead sun god Osiris, who rides across the sky every day as Apollo, okay, the sun, the literal sun. And there was a sun behind the sun, known as the dog star or Sirius, which Obama has multiple ties to. Is the ancient fascination, the ancient Egyptian fascination with the dog star Sirius. I don't want to go on this full tangent right now, but again, on the home page of my site, boxedupsunglasses.com, on the bottom, you can read all about the occultism and the numerology of Pharaoh Barry. Okay, But anyway, the takeoff here is that when you combine the rose plus the cross, okay, or the Rosicrucians, or Robert Christian, you get Occident, okay, which is synonymous with the West, plus Columbia, which is synonymous with the East and the female goddess, the whore goddess Isis. And of course, these are the two colleges that, or two of the colleges that Dumbo supposedly went to. And again, there's no evidence that he was ever at either. So what I'm saying is that he was assigned. This is an in-your-face sign, okay, like this thing and this thing right here, okay, which, by the way, we have the impending economic collapse. So after all the euphoria of the Trumpism and all that stuff wears off, we still got to deal with this, okay? This can happen any time now. This thing's ready to pop, this debt-based system, this debt-based slave system, this ancient Egyptian slave system known as the Federal Reserve. It's in your face, okay? So I'm saying in similar fashion, this guy, Pharaoh Barry, is an in-our-face image of the beast. This Occident plus Columbia Rose plus the cross. And don't forget, as we stated on many shows, the Rose plus the cross, or the Red Cross of Freemasonry, is the 18th. The Scottish Rite Freemasonry is the 18th degree, or the 6 plus 6 plus 6 degree of Freemasonry. So when you step back, there's way too many connections here. There's way too many. The conspiracy is way too weaved together, okay, for this all to be a coincidence. When you look at any one of these things in isolation, it's like, all right, the 6 plus 6 plus 6 lotto, and the night Obama wins, and back in 2000, maybe that's a coincidence, and this and that. But when you combine all these dates, there's no way it's all a coincidence. Plus my favorite, my personal favorite, this Occident plus Columbia, the colleges that Pharaoh Barry never went to. Okay, why would they pick those two? Okay, why would you? He's a mockery. Okay, he's an occult mockery in similar fashion to our Federal Reserve notes, and he ain't going anywhere, by the way. I don't know what's going to happen to Trump. They may just shoot him. Okay, they'll pull some kind of scam. I've been reading articles about the Electoral College. There's several states that supposedly haven't reported their results yet. Michigan, New Hampshire, I think Arizona was one of them. I was reading this article. Went into, just some of those electors or from the Electoral College can flip their votes, or something can happen, or who knows what can go on. Okay, but Trump ain't taking power. All right, and if he does, that's a very big if. What's he going to do when the economy collapses around him? The debt-based scam Egyptian slave economy with its Federal Reserve notes. What's Trump going to do? He's not going to be able to fight that. Okay, this is the occult conspiracy that goes back to that Garden of Eden. Okay, and the United States is Mystery Babylon. What is Trump going to do to stop that? My answer is nothing. Okay, how they, quote, they plan on proceeding from here, again, as I say, I'm not quite sure. If it's an assassination, a collapse of the economy, World War III is coming up, or any combination of these, but there's no way 200 million pissed off Americans that helped put Trump into power are going to matter to these people, okay? So, and I'm very briefly, reading through this. Okay, now we talk about the Ashlar Cube. You know what the Ashlar Cube is? It's, in Freemasonry, they're very much obsessed with rocks, okay, and building stones and this sort of thing. Excuse me. And here I quote Albert Pike, who talks about this. Okay, he talks about the sacred number 12. We talked about 120 a few minutes ago. And he goes through, 3, 5, 7, all these different numbers. What he's talking about when he talks about the Ashlar Cube is, I'll just read it. The rough Ashlar is the people as a mass, rude and unorganized. The perfect Ashlar, or cultural stone, symbol of perfection, is the state. The rulers deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. The government, harmonious, symmetrical, efficient. Its power probably distributed and duly adjusted in equilibrium. That all sounds well and good. It sounds just like some of these jackass Harvard communist professors. Okay, one of these utopian jackoffs. that pass off as, our intelligentsia and these so-called colleges in this country, these scam Ivy League colleges, okay, these tax-exempt Rockefeller-funded losers in these Ivy League universities. That's what this sounds like, but what Albert Pike is talking about is a perfect world state, okay, some kind of Luciferian utopia. Albert Pike and the Freemasons, again, are worshippers of Lucifer or Satan, and they openly admit that, okay? I don't know if it's like going off on a tangent right now, but what's very interesting, when he talks about the rough ashlars, the mass of people, and he's comparing it to, to shaping a stone. Now, things are becomes very interesting. In Matthew 24, when Jesus says, see these stones, one will not be left upon another, the entire thing is coming down. He's talking about the third temple, the temple of Herod in Jerusalem. Now that symbolism becomes a lot more significant, which is why I say these imbeciles, okay, these comic book antichrist, Israel first, Jewish temple, antichrist has to occupy a Jewish temple. These people are morons. Right, they don't have any idea what they're talking about. Okay, the symbolism is here. Now, this is really what Jesus was talking about. If you go back to Exodus, and I want to say Exodus 32. Okay, God says, bring me stones, or but they're not to be hewn stones. Okay, now when Joshua crosses into the Promised Land, I think it's Joshua chapter 3. You put the stones in the Jordan River as a sign that you pass through here, and they're not to be hewn or not to be shaped stones. Now that language, so what the hell's God? What's he talking about? What does he care about stones? What's he talking about? It's this language right here is what he's referring to. He's referring to the real core of the conspiracy, which would be the Freemasons, and the today we call Freemasons. In the past we call these the ancient high priests of ancient Egypt, or whatever ancient culture you want to pick. Now, Nimrod, of course, back in Genesis 11 was considered the first Freemason by the Freemasons themselves. And, of course, Nimrod was nothing but another offshoot of Apollo or Osiris, the equivalent sun god, okay, which is, again, right here. Now, stones. Now, you got the 72 stone, ancient Egyptian pyramid of Giza. Okay, 72, another significant number of the Freemasons. It has to do with the number of the names of God and all this sort of thing, which I don't necessarily want to get off into right now. But again, here's your stones. Okay, your hewn stones building your world state, or your Albert Pike's, utopian society. Represented by the ancient Egyptian pyramid of Giza. Okay, this is really what's being talked about here. Now, remember. Again, in Matthew chapter 3, John is basically lambasting John the Baptist is lambasting God's chosen people, the Pharisees, the Jewish Pharisees, the chosen people who would later crucify God in the flesh, Jesus. And he's saying, you den of vipers, who warned you to flee from the coming wrath, and think not that because you are Abraham's seed, you are God's children. And then John says, God can raise up children of Abraham from these stones. Okay, so obviously stones are people. All right, he's not talking about rocks. All right, so now now you're starting to, hopefully the picture is starting to come into focus as to why I consider a lot of these goofballs. All right, these just missing the quote conspiracy wholesale. It's much more pervasive. If somebody starts talking about a Jewish temple and all this, and the Jews have to, they got their cows together, or whatever the hell it is, to sacrifice at their temple, and the Antichrist. It's all nonsense. Okay, you're missing the occult conspiracy. It's coming at us with the momentum and speed of a runaway freight train. Okay, today being November 10th, 2016, it's coming at us fast. All right. And again and again and again, it's not some stupid comic book antichrist over there in Israel. Okay, it's much more serious than that. It's much more mature than that. Okay. So anyway, I'm just breezing through this. go through this. So let's just hop down here, okay, to Albert Pike wrote the aforementioned Albert Pike, who worships Lucifer, the founder of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the one that gave us the 18th or Rose Cross degree of Freemasons, or the Robert Christian degree, I like to call it. Okay, it's kind of jammed in there. So it's not a coincidence. Okay, none of this stuff is a coincidence. All right. So anyway, just to kind of get to the point here, okay, Albert Pike calls for 3 world wars, okay, which is basically order out of chaos. Now, we talked about, and I'll just read the quotes here. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars of Russia and making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. And that was an obvious result of World War One. Okay, so while Europe was busy fighting World War One, the Wall Street bankers were busy funding and founding communism over in Russia. Woodrow Wilson, gave us the scam Federal Reserve Bank here in the United States. And at the same time, these godless, evil bastards, okay, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Rothschild family, their descendants are still around, by the way. David Rockefeller's still out there, okay. Many conspiracy theorists like myself point to him many times, but there's actually the Rothschilds are actually above the Rockefellers. Rockefellers are basically minor leaguers. But anyway, so these founders of the Federal Reserve System also funded and founded the communist movement over there in Russia. And it may sound like a contradiction. Why would the capitalists and all these people fund radical communists in a revolution in Russia? It's because communism isn't the utopia that these douchebags, okay, these so-called radical leftists in this country today think it is, or these Ivy League professors, these immature, these mental children, okay, these Ivy League professors in these colleges with these utopian morons. Communism is about control, okay? It's a redistribution of wealth. That's just the way it is, okay? Your perfect world state can't exist without somebody controlling it, okay? It's a contradiction. It's just Orwell's 1984 on steroids, okay? That's obviously what you had in Nazi Germany, National Socialism. The difference between National Socialism and communism, by the way, is, Hitler was a German nationalist and communists are international. That's the only difference. Philosophically, they're exactly the same, okay? But anyway, so why would John Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan and Rothschild be so into founding communism? Because again, it's about control, okay? And we've gone through this in the past on past shows. You go through the list of the Communist Manifesto: the destruction of the family, the abolition of religion, destruction of national borders. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, the gay rights movement, the radical feminist movement. And on, okay? All these things are one and the same with the Communist Manifesto, the abolition of religion, obviously, state control of education. Okay, these are all goals of the Communist Manifesto, as well as the goals of the Illuminati, okay, founded on May 1st, 1776. And let's just talk about May 1st real quick. 1776, the foundation of the Illuminati as an illumination, okay, as in this illuminated all-seeing eye right here above the capitalist pyramid of Giza. Now, May 1st is a very interesting date. It's the foundation of the Illuminati, okay, which is one and the same with communism and Karl Marx and what he said. It's also World Workers' Day or World Socialist Day. It's also a holiday known as Beltane, okay? It's May 1st, May or Maya. May is named after the whore goddess Isis, which we talked about before, okay? And that happens to be May 1st. So all these days, so the radical environmentalists and these radical street thugs all celebrate May 1st. Is that a coincidence? Absolutely not. So you can see all the tie-ins from the top to the bottom. Now, again, we can see this today with a guy like George Soros, okay, multi-billionaire capitalist funding all these useful idiots, these communist movements worldwide as it moves into countries, not just in the anarchists in the United States, but the Ukrainian, these communists that have taken over the Ukraine in Russia are all funded by George Soros. So this international communist movement continues to this day. And again, it's not the Harvard, kiddie time, douchebag, utopian communism, Okay, it's the top-down control communism that these people are interested in, so it makes perfect sense that the biggest Wall Street banks in the world would fund and found Bolshevism, so-called. George Soros, today, again, the carryover is George Soros and all these anarchist communist groups that have been unleashed throughout the world, in the United States in particular. So all this stuff makes sense. Okay, so again, all this all ties back to the quote Great War, which is World War I. Okay, now what happened as a result of World War I, again, is documented in this book, The Un-American Genocidal Complex. You had this 20-year time frame or so where Germany was basically being rearmed. Okay, Germany, which we were not enemies with, by the way, prior to World War I, it was all contrived. We had no business, just like we have no business fighting all these wars around the world today. We had no business in a European war against Germany, but we were made to fight, made a lot of money for the newly formed Federal Reserve, and Warburg and Rothschild and J.P. Morgan and the boys made a hell of a lot of money off World War I. So there was an immediate fringe benefit for the international bankers right there. But, we had our first attempt at world government known as the League of Nations, that sellout progressive, that Ivy League, Princeton loser Woodrow Wilson who got us involved in World War I, tried to shove the League of Nations down our throats, but fortunately for America at the time, there were still some vestiges of what this country once was. There was enough to resist the movement to the League of Nations. Okay, then of course we had this rearming. We had the American Eugenics Movement. Okay, Margaret Sanger and her American Birth Control League, which again advocated the death by abortion of black babies, and today we know this as Planned Parenthood. Okay, and she had a love fest going with Adolf Hitler, as well as the other American Darwinist survival of the fittest crowd, the predecessors of today's what we call liberals. Okay, so it's kind of funny that liberals, the pro-evolution, pro-abortion, pro-environmental movement, which were huge with Adolf Hitler, it's the irony of ironies that they would call Trump and people that support Trump Hitler and Nazis when they're one and the same with the Nazis. Okay, just as an aside, it's I would like to say it's funny, but it's actually it's pathetic. Okay, but anyway, so you had this build up. World War I resulted in World War II. Okay, you had this build up of Nazi Germany and the industries of Nazi Germany, the IG Farbens, and these sorts of things. All funded by Standard Oil, Ford Motor Company, DuPont, ITT, IBM, General Motors, okay, Harriman, okay, Harriman Railroad Interest, who was tied in with them, but none other than the grandfather of the Bush family, Prescott Bush, okay, those sellout scumbag, fake Republican Bushes, okay, those Clinton supporting Bush family, the fake weapons of mass destruction, Fox News, neocon Bush family, okay. We're in the middle of this whole American industrial mess that led Adolf Hitler to power, But of course, we had Adolf Hitler, we had the Holocaust, the American Eugenics Movement kind of morphed, by the way, as documented here into today's environmental movement, which, the anti-Ten Commandments of the environmental/liberal movement are enshrined right here, okay, as we discussed before, leading to 90% reduction in the world's population, and all this sort of thing. Again, you have that nature worship kind of thing going on. Remember, May 1st, okay, Beltane, okay, is huge with the radical environmental movement because it's the birthday of their whore goddess Isis or Gaia or Mother Earth. Okay, so this stuff all connects is what I'm getting at. Okay, but again, so World War II, and of course out of World War II, what did we get? We got the second attempt at world government called the United Nations. Now the nexus of world government and the radical environmental movement is right here in these United Nations. Okay, the Rockefeller funded and founded the United Nations. So there's that name Rockefeller again. So you have this interesting irony of the richest capitalists in the world being the real money powers behind the radical environmental movement. And again, it makes sense because, again, the environmental movement is about control and population reduction. okay, which is going to bring about this ashlar cube, this perfect ashlar that Albert Pike, high-level Freemason, was talking about. We just talked about a few minutes ago. So let's read Albert Pike's take on World War II. Okay, the Second World War must be fermented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascist and the political Zionist. The war must be brought so Germany is destroyed and that the political Zionism is strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel and Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which should be restrained until the time when we would need for the final world cataclysm. So again, there's a few things that, where we can see this kind of pops through into history. So what the hell is this? What's he talking about? Okay, let me throw a name out here. The great Joe McCarthy. Okay, the great Senator Joe McCarthy, back there in the 50s. Okay, and his crew. Okay, now of course McCarthy is just excoriated in today's fake United States press. Okay, the Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, founded New York Times, and all these other, this scam. Okay, this so-called press in this country. What you just saw is a pathetic excuse for, it's not even Pravda, as we just saw with this election of Donald Trump to the presidency. People are really seeing how controlled and pathetic the press really is. But that same press and those same, taxpayer-funded, assholes at these Ivy League universities, okay, that teach this stuff, excoriate the great Joe McCarthy. But this is basically what Joe McCarthy tripped over, okay? This is why he's so hated. Because he exposed this post-World War II, this American government support, okay, for all these communist countries and all these communist spies that were being convicted. And a few of them were convicted in this country. Harry Dexter White, okay, for example, the Rosenbergs, okay, and these sorts of people who were high-level Soviet spies and communists, okay, they were infiltrated our government and our universities. Okay, and Joe McCarthy and a few others started looking into this, and when they started looking into it, they discovered they really did come up with these tax-exempt foundations: the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment, the Ford Foundation. Okay, this is what McCarthy found out, is that all these so-called liberals and progressives in this country, okay, all the money, just like George Soros today. George Soros doesn't even hide it, but in similar fashion, all the money for all these so-called liberals and progressives, that were bringing about the destruction of the family, the destruction of America, the so-called liberals, the destruction of religion, okay, the central control of the economy, redistribution of wealth. Remember, we talked about what communism really is. All this funding for all these useful idiots, these morons, these liberal morons, was coming from these tax-exempt foundations. So this is how they were making international communism, i.e. the Soviet Union, equal to America. They were giving away our nuclear secrets. They were weakening America, and at the same time funding communist Russia. Okay, and there's a great quote by David Rockefeller, Memoirs of David Rockefeller, where he admits to working with the communists, the Chinese, and the Russians, even during the Vietnam War. Okay. So that son of a bitch, the Rockefeller family and the Bushes and all these other people that they're tied in with, this cabal that runs this nation, which I don't consider my nation, by the way, this Federal Reserve Corporation called the United States, they were trading with the Chinese and the Russians. Okay, what were they doing? During the Vietnam War, they're turning right around and selling their stuff to Vietnam. Okay. This is above treason, okay? But these are the people that run the government right now. All right, this is the real evil. But anyway, all this hanky panky going on behind the scenes. Remember, the evil empire in Russia, communism as a economic system, by the way, should just automatically implode on itself. It should just collapse, like Venezuela or any other communist country in history. Okay, it has to collapse on its own weight, because people starve to death. Look at North Korea. Okay, it's getting its technology. Where's it getting technology from? From China. Where did China get their technology from? Well, from people like the Clintons, and from a lot of help from people like the Rockefellers. Okay, who have been floating China and in the industries, communism in and of itself is a system of death and control, okay, and despair. It shouldn't. It doesn't make any sense that it's equivalent, or it's been able to generate enough power to be equivalent to the United States without a lot of selling or direct selling of technology and a lot of financial support for these so-called evil empire, that the old Soviet Union, the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the North Koreans, etc. Okay, so I guess the goal of Albert Pike is a check. Okay, so just to review real quick, they created Hitler, gave us World War II. Russia, the so-called communists, became very powerful post-World War II. And by the way, this is what George Patton was onto this too. So not only, you had Joe McCarthy, the great Joe McCarthy, okay, who, went to Bethesda Naval Hospital and, quote, committed suicide, where a lot of, politicians or people that speak out against the quote conspiracy end up at Bethesda Naval Hospital. In the case of JFK, they end up getting their head blown off in broad daylight. But anyway, it's very interesting that George Patton is another one that was saying, "What the hell are we? Why are we coddling these Soviets? Why aren't we? What are we doing?" Okay, he was shooting his mouth off. He couldn't figure out why the United States was becoming so chummy with the Soviet Union. And I submit that it's right out of Pike's letter here. That was all by design. And of course, George Patton is another one that died on a very suspicious motor vehicle accident, I believe it was, but very suspicious circumstances. Okay, so they shut him up. Okay, right after the end of World War II. Okay, and that's when again, you had your tax-exempt foundation funded liberals, exposed by the great Joe McCarthy, that were doing the bidding of the international bankers that were weakening this nation as well as strengthening the Soviet Union by selling them, nuclear secrets and industrial secrets and all this sort of thing, basically floating the Soviet Union. So you had this propaganda of the United States, fighting the evil empire. Okay. Then you had the collapse of the Soviet Union, all this theater, okay, all this nonsense. Okay, so then let's move on to World War III. Now, again, for those of you keeping track, we had World War I, we had World War II. World War III hasn't happened yet. Okay, that's yet. I submit, according to many websites, it's actually starting right now. I mean, the stupid press, the stupid Trump versus Clinton, Fox News, ridiculous press in this country isn't reporting on it. Maybe once in a while, maybe a hint of it sneaks through, but World War III is already underway in Syria, by the way. So this is the Third World War. So this is the World War trifecta per Albert Pike. Okay. The Third World War must be fermented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agent of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. ISIS, ring a bell. Okay, weapons of mass destruction, the destruction of Libya. So these psychopaths, Hillary, Bilderberg Jr., creating these power vacuums in the Middle East, destabilizing the Middle East. Okay, the Russians are getting tired of it, so they're looking to defend Syria. We're looking to start a war in Syria over what? 200,000 dead Syrians. The country turned upside down. Okay, much worse than what it was. Than that we came in to spread democracy. Okay, they hate us because of our freedoms. The grandson of the Hitler Bush family, George Jr., the weapons of mass destruction. They hate us because of our freedoms. The 9/11 scam, Bush Jr. gave us that whole thing. Okay, destabilizing the Middle East. So now you have the Islamic world side of the equation and the political Zionist. Okay, the war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. And that's very interesting. We'll get to that in a minute. For all these, these Israel first, Jewish temple antichrist imbeciles. Okay. We shall unleash the nihilist and the atheist, and we shall provoke a great social cataclysm in which in all its horror will show clearly. I'm going to wrap this up here in a second, which will show clearly all the nations the effect of absolute atheism. Christianity will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer. Yeah, Freemasons aren't devil worshippers, and here's the founder, of American Freemasonry, Albert Pike, talking about the pure doctrine of Lucifer. Remember Lucifer climbing the tree of knowledge that we talked about before. Okay, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life, that we talked about in this book. Okay, that the weirdo Hillary Clinton and John Podesta and the like, are involved in the same satanic occult rituals. But anyway, the pure doctrine of Lucifer brought out into public view. A manifestation which results from a general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. So he's talking about World War III, which is, the stage is being set for this right now. Okay, and political Zionism. Okay, so you idiots, you Israel First, Third Temple, Antichrist idiots. Okay, the foundation of Israel, okay, it was really funded by the Rothschilds and their gang. Okay, and I believe it's because for control of Jerusalem, just like the Knights Templar wanted control of Jerusalem, and the Roman Catholic Church wanted control of Jerusalem, and the Muslim world wanted control of Jerusalem. They look at as some kind of prize. Okay, and it has been the center of the Old Testament. Okay, but that's your political Zionism, is the foundation of the nation of Israel, as brought about by the Rothschild family. Okay, now we're getting into to the Bible and the Old Testament, and really, God does have a hand in this. Okay, and He did regather the Jews from around the world. Okay, He is ultimately He's in control of this whole thing. So when He says in Ezekiel 36, "I will regather you," that's basically how He did it. I mean, He's using these these Luciferians, these self-admitted Luciferians, to do it. But be that as it may, okay, the prediction was made in Ezekiel 36, just so God says, so I'll do it to protect my name. Okay, I'm making this prediction and I'm going to follow through with it. And how He accomplished it, that gets kind of off the subject a little bit. But anyway, the foundation of Israel really was an event predicted in the Bible, brought about by these Freemasons, because they really do believe that ancient Israel and Solomon's temple and control of the Temple Mount really does hold secrets, the keys to heaven, just like the Knights Templar. Okay, they went around the world building cathedrals. Okay, the largest one, which is right here in Mystery Babylon, known as St. John's Divine. Okay, and I don't know if there's a whole subject, and that's a link on this link. They call conspiracy on cathedrals. But anyway, the point is that Israel will be in the center of this thing at some point, just not now. So just let me wrap up by saying this. If you live in the United States right now, you should be much more worried about what Mystery Babylon is, which is this country, than what's going to go on in Israel, after we're wiped off the face of the earth. Okay, and I believe that really is the battle of Armageddon. But we need not worry about it, because if I'm right, and I hope I couldn't be more wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. This country's got limited time. Okay, and that's, again, the Mystery Babylon USA link, and we've gone through that, and you can read about that there. But that's your Third World War, and the stage is happening. It's happening right now. Okay, you have the United States and its allies aligned with the Muslims, and Israel's right in the middle of this, and Russia and China, they're all converging on Syria. Okay, so what are you accomplishing with the Third World War? You're getting your order out of chaos. You're destroying the world. You're reducing the Earth's population by 90% instantaneously. So the HIV virus and a smallpox vaccine, maybe that wasn't fast enough, and whatever else, the radical environmental movement burning our food supply with ethanol, starving people to death worldwide. Maybe that's not fast enough. Maybe we need to implement World War III, which they're doing. And if anybody has an explanation of what's going on in the psychopathic drive for World War III, outside of Albert Pike's letter here, I'm all ears. Okay, so hopefully, I know I try to tie a lot of things together here in a short time, but hopefully it all makes sense. Okay, hopefully I've tried to do my best to clarify things, and again, and all this is a very brief overview of the occult conspiracy link on boxofsunglasses.com. Okay, you can spend hours going through this. I tried to sum up a portion of it in an hour. Okay, but it's all right here. And again, the most important link on this whole page, God's Simple Salvation Plan. Okay, I suggest you read it. Get square with God, the real God, not the Lucifer, okay, that Albert Pike talks about, okay, in his letter here, talking about the 3 world wars. Anyway, there's a little bit more to talk about right here, and we'll get back to it on the next episode. That'll be it. Rob Roselli, boxofsunglasses.com. Good night and God bless.